At exactly 3 p.m., I scanned the Cascades and caught 9 blazing shapes skipping like stones across the sky. No engine, no contrails, just speed and light arranged in a tilting line that kept its own discipline. I timed them against the skyline from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams, wrote the numbers on my map board, and my chart math said faster than anything with a prop. When I banked for another look, my compass card trembled, my ADF needle pegged and relaxed, and the air stayed crystal and silent when it should have been scissored by noise. By sundown, the headlines would have a new name for them. I didn't say flying saucers, the papers did. What I said was they moved like saucers skipping over water. Speed is a language. Formation is grammar. I wrote in my log that night. If you want to understand what I saw, start there. I'm not a mystery man, I'm a salesman and a pilot. My business does all right because I'm fussy with numbers and loyal to checklists. That afternoon, June 24, 1947, I had my single-engine Call Air A2 trimmed hands-off and was running a private search pass for a downed marine transport rumored to be in the mountains east of Seattle. The air was the kind you brag about. Crystal visibility, a dry blue that makes distances honest. Mount Rainier wore a crown the sun polished all by itself. Mount Adams sat farther south like a quiet judge. You get good at making the coastlines in your head when you fly interior Washington. Ridges like knuckles, glacier scabs, the shadow geometry of cirques that tell you what o'clock it is without a watch.
My altimeter read just above 9,000.
The engine settled into that trustworthy buzz that teaches your spine a lullaby. I had the window cracked for a shot of high mountain air, and the smell of pine drifted up in a way that would make a marketing man write a terrible poem. The first one didn't arrive as a thing. It arrived as a reflection that wouldn't behave. A flash left of Rainier winked once and then twice like a Morse too lazy to spell. Then the line appeared, 9 of them, stretched on a slanted file, edge on, moving from north to south with a motion that wasn't smooth and wasn't jerky. It was pulsed, skip, skip, glide, as if the air were a lake and each one knew exactly when to lift. I went straight to method. If you panic in the sky, you will turn poetry into a stall. I put my right hand on the yoke, my left on the map board, and I started a clock. The distance from Rainier to Adams is known. The angle from my position to the south ridge is measure. Timed crossings across a fixed meridian. That's velocity, the way a shopkeeper knows how much beef to slice. I chose an imaginary gate along the ridgeline and watched them slice it in sequence. 1, 2, 3, my second hand chewing the margin. 17 seconds to clear a span that should punish anything slower than a miracle. Do the math the way I did in the cockpit. If what I thought I saw was distance d, then speed was d bar 17s. It penciled over 1 bar 200 mph, a number that lives in test pilots' rumors, not in civilian cockpit math. Contrails? I asked the air because it's a habit of mine to say options out loud. None. Engine note? The cabin had only my prop and the soft cough of air under the sill. I looked for smart explanations. Glinting DC-4s further out on airway, B-25s in formation, meteors flattening their pride across the noon blue. Every reasonable candidate brought a contrail, a profile, a sound my ears could hire. These brought none. I changed aspect to learn if my eyes were asking for trouble. A left bank puts the right wing into the picture and gives your retina more sky to grade. As I rolled, the compass card gave a tiny wobble, half a degree, nothing, and my ADF needle did a fast lean toward a worthless bearing and then returned like it had apologized. The line of objects seemed to tilt with me, not mirror me, not chase me, but tilt, like a school of fish all making the same decision at the same time. Something inside me wanted to call them discs. Something else wanted to call them blades. They caught the sun like silver plates turned edgewise, and when they tilted, they flashed a flat face that was too bright to be cloth and too clean to be paint. They didn't roll like planes do to hold formation through turns. They skipped, then held a plane of motion that felt like a teacher demonstrating geometry with a ruler. I keyed the mic. The nearest ears might be Yakima or McCord if anyone had time for a civilian. Traffic from Rainier southbound, anyone with formation visual? My voice sounded steadier than my blood. All I got was carrier and the soft hash that says you're not the most important thing in the sky. I didn't blame them. I made a second timing against the next ridge gate because 1 number is a party trick. 2 are data, 17 again and a hair. Not drifting, not wavering. You learn to love repeatable things because that's how you earn the right to be believed. I'll tell you what I am and what I am not. I am a private pilot with more airtime than a lot of men, And I am a businessman who lives by the margin. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a stunt flyer. I'm not a man whose eye hungry for the unusual. I know the difference between a reflection on a windshield and a target in the world, because flying is just the art of not lying to yourself long enough to land. That day, the air was practicing its best impression of glass. I used the Cascades as a ruler because mountains don't join your illusions. They cure them. I use the sun to grade the flashes. Constant angle gives constant reflection. A change tells you tilt. I remembered a DC-4 that had crossed my path earlier. Far off, heavy and honest. And I ran the comparison in my head. If a 4-engine transport at known speed pencils to S, then these 9 were writing a different alphabet. I sketched it. I'll show the sketch if you ask nicely. A slanted string, 9 marks, the leading one out ahead, the tail straggling tighter than the head, like a race where the winners cared less about the tape. The skip had period, the glide had intent, and the tilt, that precise little lean, didn't match my bank but kept its own. There's a particular silence you get up there where the engine becomes furniture. Your brain steps around it and notices the empty places where trouble should announce itself. I banked right, then back to level, and watched the line cross the face of Rainier where the rock carves the sky into 90-degree opinions. They flashed like mirrors for a heartbeat across the darker slope. If you want a biological measure, the skin under my watchband felt cold. That's the body's way of writing a margin note. Pay attention. My ADF did its little click and peg again, just long enough to make a mark in memory. I wrote ADF peg on the board and then scolded myself because a question mark isn't a number. But there would be time later for penance. The line began to fade toward atoms as if a coach had blown a whistle we couldn't hear. This is the part where you want me to say something that ties the bow so you can enjoy the story as a story. The cockpit doesn't give you bows. It gives you angles, times, temperatures, and the boom of your own heart when you wish you were a little smarter. When I landed, I didn't think I had history. I thought I had math. I taxied with the nose light kissing a strip of paved certainty. Ran the shutdown. Let the prop spin down past windmill and into stop. And wrote the line that pilots write when events outgrow adjectives. Unusual traffic. The ramp man asked me how the mountains looked, and I said, new. That was me being dramatic for nobody. At the FBO, the phone line wore out before the receiver did. A reporter had heard 9 objects and wanted the shape. Another had heard skipping and wanted the name. I tried to be clean with words. Disc-like, I said, because I felt I owed the flash that much. They move like saucers would if you skimmed them across water. I used like and if on purpose, the way a man uses gloves around acid. The next morning, like and if would be gone and flying saucers would wear new clothes. Plural and unshy, across typefaces my mother would have saved. I met with 2 airport men who've seen everything, and one said he'd watched military formations do fancy things, but never a fancy thing without a trail. Another said sun ghosts can do heresy but not in formation. A line boy who should have been pumping Avgas pretended to do paperwork so he could listen. He heard 1,200 mph and made a face the way boys do when you mention cigarettes. By supper, the phones at the Aero Club had turned into hot ribbons. Men and women wanted to talk through their noon sightings, the silver that ran ahead of their cars, the lights that lined the river like riverboats, the blades that had no hubs. That's not me saying they did. That's me saying they said. When a word lands in a town, people march behind it because words are flags. 2 men in good suits did a bad job of looking like nobody and asked for times, bearings, my sketch, and my promise to be precise when imprecise people came ringing. I showed them my map board and the math, and one of them smiled in a way that made me think he preferred numbers to people, which is a preference I understand. They asked about noise. I said there was none, which felt like confessing a sin I didn't commit. They asked if I'd been drinking. I said coffee twice. They asked me to repeat saucers skipping, because one of them liked the shape of it. Language has its own greed. The next morning, the headline did not ask how my mother was. It said saucers as if the town had switched to a new currency overnight. I read every sentence like a pilot reads a fuel gauge at night, suspiciously. They framed me fine. They framed the objects as mine, which they were not. I'd been a witness, not a husband. But I understand how papers feed a town's appetite without making it sick. They salt the truth and serve it hot. What came after wasn't mine to control. Reports from other counties. Farm wives who saw things through laundry lines. Reservists who swore at sky and then at wives who didn't believe them. A B-25 crewman who said, lightning that changed its mind. Men who liked jokes and men who liked answers changed seats and wore each other's hats. People asked if I was afraid. Fear is a stall when you have airspeed. I wasn't afraid. I was interested. That's the kind of problem you can take to dinner. Here is what I will defend under oath, because the sky deserves adults. 9 objects disc-like arranged in a slanted line, moving north to south between the sight lines of Mount Rainier and Mount Adams. Motion with period. Skip, skip, glide. Not wobble, not drift, and no visible control surfaces doing the work I'd expect. No contrails. No engine note. The air did not whisper anything to me except silence. 2 timings against fixed mountain features gave me 17 seconds to cross a known span, which yields a speed that is not for prop planes, not for me. A speed that belongs to a column in a magazine about tomorrow. Compass gave a half-degree tremble during a bank. ADF pegged and returned twice. Note, that is anecdote supported by scribble, not instrument recording. I don't aggrandize it. I include it. Reflection behavior matched tilt. When they leaned, they flashed, not like polished wings, more like flat facets catching a single sun. If you have to accuse me of something, accuse me of being earnest with a clock. I have been a boy who counted railroad ties and became a man who counts minutes. If my counting gave the town a word to enjoy, that's on the town more than it's on me. The sky did what the sky is paid to do, hold mystery without malice. I have heard the counter-arguments and I'm not married to my noun. Mirage, show me 9 mirages that hold formation and period and we'll trade notes. Military testcraft? Give me 9 of any secret at once that don't leave a line behind them and we'll applaud together. Geese catching sun? I've seen geese catch more than sun and they still leave geese in their motion. Downwash, feather edges, organic wobble. This had machine discipline without machine residue. In my quieter hours, I remember a small, stupid thing. For a day after, the skin under my watch band felt like it had been chilled and warmed in quick pulses. The way your hand feels when you step inside from snow and forget to take your glove off. I don't sell that as anything. I sell timings and angles. The rest is fog that sometimes learns to be polite. If you want a moral, make it small so you can carry it. Speed is a language. Formation is grammar. When both speak and neither leave smoke or sound, you have to admit the sentence isn't in your book yet. I kept my sketch in the log. I dated it, signed it, and wrote "Do not embellish" in the margin, because future me likes to tell better stories than past me earned. Sometimes I take the paper out and the pencil mark looks younger than my hands. The math still stands. The Cascades still stand. The word the town made still flies without asking my permission. If your eyes have ever done the same. Math, if you timed objects with no contrails across fixed peaks and your numbers asked you to. Grow a second belief, leave me a single word so the room knows we aren't writing into a solo saucers. No coordinates, no airframe IDs, no pilot names. Just saucers. I'll read it like I read a chart at dusk, carefully. Grateful for the ink and willing to be surprised again. By sundown that night, I learned the weird power of a metaphor. I meant it as a comparison, not a baptism. The town did the rest. The sky didn't mind. It rarely does. The last thing I will say is a small prayer disguised as procedure. When the numbers look impossible, write them down anyway. Tomorrow needs data more than it needs comfort. I gave the day my best version of both. Minutes, angles, a metaphor. The day repaid me with a headline that will outlive my better traits. I'm at peace with that. The Cascades will always be older than any word we throw at them. I still fly that route some afternoons when business tells me to stretch my eyes. Rainier still glitters, Adams still listens. I bank and the compass minds its manners. The ADF keeps to its chores, and the only thing that skips across the blue is the thought that the sky once learned a new verb in front of me. If it happens to you, if you ever see speed speaking in a grammar you don't own, don't sell it cheap and don't dress it for a parade. Write, time, compare. Then let the town do what it will. The sky will remain what it is. It's a good arrangement.